Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight for honoring the legacy of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We honored her on a very high holiday in the Jewish faith, Rosh Hashanah, so we need to make sure we keep that in mind tonight. We pay tribute to her life as a champion, a fighter, a feminist, a woman, a wife, a mother, and a hero. She was a trailblazer, and she did not waver in her defense of equality and in her defense of justice. Now, there are very few people who have had as powerful and as lasting effect as Justice Ginsburg. Early in her career, she became the first woman who was a full professor at Columbia Law School. I'm not sure everybody knows that, but I think that is just one moment in her life that shows the epitome of her work. She co-founded the ACLU's project, Women's Rights Project, and she served as director for many years. And while she served there, she argued 6 landmark cases before the US Supreme Court around gender equality. Now, in 1993, she became only the second female justice to serve on our highest court, where she has served for 27 years. Now, she broke so many barriers, and she will continue to be an inspiration for generations to come. Her fierce dedication to women's rights, LGBTQ rights, the rights of immigrants and refugees, housing rights, voting rights, access to health care, and affirmative action were seen in her progressive and consistent votes while she was in court. I just want to share a few examples of some of the work that she had done for us over the 27 years. Back in 1996, she wrote the majority opinion in United States versus Virginia. And this serves as a milestone for women's rights and university admissions. She used the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to cause this institution for the first time in its history to allow women to join in the fall of 1997. In the ruling Olmstead versus LC, this was a milestone for individuals with disabilities and protecting their rights. The outcome of Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015 is monumental as well. This was monumental for same-sex couples and LGBTQ rights. Her vote helped to overturn the marriage bans of same-sex marriage, and it legalized it in every U.S. state. One more case, in the case of Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstedt, she helped to strike down the contentious law from Texas that was imposing a number of very stark regulations on abortion clinics. Now, when I heard the news last night, I was devastated and I was heartbroken, and I readily admit I cried. I cried last night, I cried today. Deep within me, I feel fear. I feel fear of what may come, and my heart, it's heavy with this loss. But seeing all of you and seeing how we've come together to honor her legacy, seeing how we have stood up for one another and cared and comforted one another, that lifts my heart. I refuse to give up hope. We don't have the right to give up hope. Hope is a discipline. Hope is a responsibility. And hope is something we must work out every single day, even when our hearts are aching. Justice Bader Ginsburg said, real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. She inspires us to take those steps, and she is passing on that torch of justice to us. Now we must pick up that torch and bear its responsibility. She leaves a country changed because of her life's work, and we must honor her legacy. Now, I would like for us to take a moment of silence in her honor. Peace be upon her, and may her memory be a blessing. That moment never seems long enough to honor all that she had done for us. I love her quotes. I have many of them on my work office. I have one on my wall at home. When there are 9 is on my wall at home. And I love explaining that when folks ask me what it stands for. When she was asked how many Supreme Court justices, how many women would be enough, and she said, when there are 9. Now that might seem like a stark answer, but nobody blinked an eye when it was 9 men. So when there are 9. She also famously said, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. Now we are so fortunate in our community that we do have women in places where decisions are being made. My name is Stefanie Munsterman-Scriven, and it is my honor to introduce the wonderful, phenomenal women who are speaking. Our first speaker for this event following me is Iowa State Senator Liz Mathis.
Hello, everyone. A few observations about a woman who made so many firsts. You can't spell truth without Ruth. She helped change the laws because of real experiences of women, the most vulnerable and the most marginalized. She was a fierce champion for equal protection under the law. She was small in stature, but filled the room with this awesome power. The older she became, the more powerful her presence. Though she was brilliant, her obstacles were like many of ours, balancing a career, and family, having her voice heard, and getting a seat at the table. A woman's right to choose is the law of the land. Judge Ginsburg stood before it like a Mack truck. She knew women's health care decisions belong to women. My advice, be cautious of those who send flyers to your mailbox masquerading as women's champions. She talked slowly and deliberately, and we hung on every word. Though she was an intellect, she spoke to the people, understanding that the people have the power to change things. She worked out in a sweatshirt that said Super Diva. We can all learn from her friendship with Justice Scalia, an ardent conservative. They focused on what they had in common. She embraced all the pop culture of being called Notorious RBG, even though at first she didn't really know who Notorious B.I.G. was. Her work was brilliant, even before she was a Supreme Court justice. She won 5 cases, of course, before the Supreme Court, and said her focus was to attack the most pervasive stereotype in the law, that men are independent and women are men's dependents. In a documentary, she said, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks. The night and the next day after the presidential election in 2016, I was sprawled out on my couch, not sleeping a wink all night, wallowing in sorrow about Hillary Clinton's loss. My husband walked in the room and he said, "Get up, you won." Get up and get out there. Fight harder, dig deeper, and help protect the rights of the women who elected you. Tonight we must remember the depths of this sorrow to celebrate the height of our victories to come. RBG didn't work so damn hard for us to wallow. She worked to create a path for us. More than a path, a highway, really. One that's wide and strong and with big shoulders. She said to Harvard students, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. RBG, we promise, we'll pick up our damn misery and move. We'll do all we can to make certain your legacy is never forgotten. Thank you.
Next, we would please ask House Representative Liz Bennett.
There we go. Wow. I don't know how I can possibly add to what Senator Liz Mathis has said. I think that for many of us, what is inside of our hearts is so big that we aren't sure what to say or do right now. For the past 4 years, though, we have been inspired by Ruth Bader Ginsburg in saying, I dissent. We dissent. For the past 4 years, we have stepped out in courage to say that America is worth fighting for, that everybody is welcome in America, and that sometimes when we miss the mark, it is worth fighting for to make sure that every person, regardless of their religion, their race, their sex, the language they were born speaking, that every person has equal protection under the law in the United States. That's worth fighting for. Now, one of the things that I have been thinking about today is something that Justice Ginsburg was quoted as saying. And it starts off as that dissents are written for a future era. Dissents are written for a future era. We know that when our country was founded, their founders didn't think about women or Black Americans as equal citizens. But we know that as time has gone on, we have moved in the direction of including more and more people in the American dream. The dissents of today become the prevailing opinions of tomorrow. That's what Justice Ginsburg has said. So what that means is that for all of the hardship and the misery of the past 4 years, all of the fighting that we have done, we will all continue to work together to bend that arc. We will bend that arc of history towards justice together. And folks, I felt pretty bad last night. I'm still feeling pretty bad. I'm scared for our country. I'm scared for my friends and neighbors. But I committed to myself last night to do every single thing that I can do to take action to make sure that we continue to move in the direction of including more and more Americans in the American dream. And that is why I am urging you to join me in getting uncomfortable. You know what? I don't really like calling people and asking them for money. I'm going to call you and ask you for money. Because you know what? We have no firewall right now here in the state of Iowa against folks who think that immigrants, who think that LGBTQ folks, even who think that women are better seen than heard, right? So we are going to flip that Iowa House, and I need your help to do that. So I'm going to call you, I'm going to text you, I'm going to make myself do it. You know, Harrison Ford said something that has stuck with me for over 20 years, and that is, the force is with you. Force Elect yourself, right? So we are going to do that. I urge you to take action if you have not already. Join the campaign to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Woo. Our democracy is on the line. We will not go down to die as our nation descends into fascism. We will fight and we will win. So please text 30330 to take action to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We dissent for the future of our nation, and we will ascend to the highest heights.
Thank you so much for your words of inspiration. Could we also now have City Council Member Ashley Vanorny?
And that sometimes when we get to mark, it is more effective for us to make sure that everyone, their race, their sex, the language they were born speaking, that every person has equal protection under the law of the United States. That's what we're fighting for.
Thank you all for being here to remember Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In 1993, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg received a 96-4 yay vote in the 103rd Congress and was appointed to the Supreme Court. She was the first female Jewish justice and longest-serving Jewish justice ever, which is appropriate to recognize given that it's the second day of Rosh Hashanah. In 2013, the Supreme Court rendered its decision on discriminatory voting practices, and in her dissent, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote, "Throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet. This particularly resides with me. It wasn't a majority opinion, but that dissent is really important because I think of all the black voices that are asking to be heard right now in this movement. I think about all the LGBTQ folks, even in my own family, who hung on to that 2015 vote because then they realized that they could be married and have their family legitimately. I think of all those who are in here today wondering if a replacement on the Supreme Court justice would jeopardize the sanctity of their own families or take away that empowerment of those to make their own medical decisions. This is a sentiment that I hold on to very tightly. I see Ruth Bader Ginsburg every single day in my living room. I've got a wonderful poster that the Walls family created as part of their women party. She inspires me every single day, even in my own race, to become the second youngest woman to ever serve in Cedar Rapids, in Iowa's second largest city. And I have to say that because all the women that came before me, even on the stage today, were people who made it easier for me. Just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg made it easier for the rest of us women to have a place in society. Matter of fact, it was Representative Bennett, who was one of the stakeholders that I interviewed, and asked if this was something that needed to be done. And unlike many males and many more privileged people in the community who I thought were good people to ask, she said, absolutely, I think you have a wonderful opportunity, you have a wonderful voice. Other people said, you might want to wait your turn. You might want to wait. Maybe you need some more experience, right? Because it's hard to be the first, like she was. It's hard to be out on your own, to be in the minority as far as a female justice. Many of us worked really hard towards the goal this year of having 50% of women occupy 50% of the seats in 2020. To that end, there is still much work to be done. Even on our own city council, we only have 2 of 9 right now. Justice Bader Ginsburg famously stated, "I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask is our brethren to that they take their feet off our necks." She was also reported to explain, as we've heard earlier, that we'll only have enough representation when we finally have a dominance of female representation, meaning 9. So folks, we have a lot of work to do. I ask you now, if you have the privilege to have an umbrella, carry it with you every single day. And be thinking of those who need your protection, who need your advocacy and support. When you find yourself able to help your neighbor, we have 45 days. So let's get to work.
Thank you so much for your words, Ashley. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. She is my representative for the City Council, so give her kudos. Woohoo! Next, can we please have Lyz Lenz, author and columnist.
Clearly they know who I am, obviously. Alright, hi, I'm Lyz Lenz, and I have a word for you all tonight. I'm the only non-politician speaking, so you have to listen. Because I'm not here for a vote, I'm here to give you all a call to action. But first, let's talk about Joan Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was born to Jewish Russian immigrants on March 15, 1933. She grew up in Brooklyn in a world where women got married and didn't go to college. But Ruth's mother, Celia, had a different plan. She raised Ruth to read, raised her to think, raised her to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. And we are here today to honor that we live in the world that Ruth Bader Ginsburg imagined. Ruth went to college, she went to law school. She was one of 5 women in her 500-person class. When she graduated, no one wanted to hire her, even though she graduated top of her class. Then, a wife and a mother, they thought her place was at home, but Ruth knew otherwise. I was stunned as I read her biography last night to remember that a woman who would become one of the most powerful and influential women in American history had to work as a typist because men didn't want to hire her. How she got her first clerking job was because one of her law professors threatened a judge, saying that if she wasn't hired, the best student in her law class, he'd never send any other students that judge's way. So much in this world is different, but so much is the same. I too have had a hard time getting hired for jobs in this town. And every day the job I do have is threatened by men who do not like what I say, who call every day asking that I get fired. You think that's an exaggeration? It's not. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life and legacy was defined by her belief not just in equal rights for women, but equal rights for all people. She saw that when one person is discriminated against, it traps all of us. As a lawyer, she fought on equal laws that prevented fathers from accessing Social Security benefits when they were widowed. She fought so fathers could access military benefits when their wives died and left them the single parent. I listened to a story this morning on Radio Lab about Justice Ginsburg, who took up a case where in Oklahoma, women could buy beer at 18, but men couldn't because, you know, men are so mean and violent and women are so docile, which if you've ever met me, you know that's not true. She wrote an amicus brief on that case. It got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and when the man who was the lead lawyer on that case bungled it, somehow, nobody knows exactly how, she was arguing the next case, and the Supreme Court justices ended up asking her about the previous case, which she fought and won, not even the lead lawyer on it, right? It was a Trojan horse situation, sliding in equal rights for women through a case on equal rights for men. She won a case that she wasn't even the lead lawyer on because she knew that when men are equal, women are equal. That all lives matter when Black lives matter. She knew that we have to be, that equality cannot come at the cost of equality to others. But Ginsburg acknowledged that the changes she ushered in were possible not just through her capable arguments, but because of a tide of change that was happening in America. And this is the part that encourages me. Because in her New York Times obituary, they quote her as saying that Supreme Court justices are just as moved by the tide of current. And she said, I suspect that the world was changing because of the aspirations of women, particularly the daughters and granddaughters of the judges making the decisions in their own families and communities. Right now, so many of us feel as though Justice Ginsburg was one of the last people standing between us and the legal underpinning of our bodily autonomy through the courts, but that's not true. Not entirely. We are the change. We are the ones who create the culture through which judges rule. We as people in our public and private dissents and our reimaginations of society, we are more powerful than we think, and we are more powerful than we are told we are. When Ruth became Justice Ginsburg, the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court, her career became defined not by the battles she won, but by the ones she lost. Justice Ginsburg seemed to know that you don't win every battle, but a loss can be a win through vocal and critical dissent. In the case of Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, the court voted 5-4 to reject a woman's claim of pay discrimination, but in her dissent, delivered from the bench, Ginsburg called Congress to act, and they did. On January 29, 2009, President Obama signed the Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Law. We have lost so much this year. We have lost jobs. 200,000 Americans are dead. And nearly 1,300 of those people are Iowans. We have lost a school year. We have lost our homes. We have lost our businesses, our walls, and our roofs when the wind snatched them away from us, and we have lost a sense of safety. And we have lost so many battles. In the wake of these Black Lives Matter protests, we were promised so much reform, and many of those promises have been stalled out because of the comfort of the people in power and the gravitational pull of the status quo. I call it being passive-aggressive doubt. It's when we get pushed from the rooms of power. And how often have I seen men discuss my words in rooms where I'm not present? How often have I seen in this town women fired for their opinions? How often have I seen people who preach equality ask the voices of the dissent to be quiet and just, be more polite? Too often, that's the answer. And I dissent.
Yeah.
It is easy when you lose and in a year of losses to be cynical. And all too often in political punditry, cynicism and realism are stand-ins for actual critical thought. Do not be complacent with the world as it is. Be bold enough too, like Justice Ginsburg, to fight for the world that can be, that ought to be. Justice Ginsburg died on the first day that voting began. That is how long she held on. Voting doesn't start in 45 days. It started yesterday, and she knew that. And I think that strength is her legacy, and I carry that with me, and we must all carry that with us. So often I am told to be quiet, be nicer, just write a nice column every once in a while. And I refuse, and here is why. Because like Justice Ginsburg, I know that our voices matter, and I will dissent, and I will fight, and I will not stop. And neither will you, because I'm watching. I remember, I have a word, so I'm just going to keep going. I remember in college writing a story on fraternities and Rush and walking into the campus center and seeing male classmates who were much larger and way more popular than me, holding the newspaper with my words printed on it and shaking and shouting. But you want to know what? I wasn't afraid. What that made me feel was powerful. That people who would otherwise never listen to me had to listen because of how and what I wrote.
and I will never forget that memory. Even now, as I watch our governor and legislature vote for unconstitutional laws that restrict my rights, even as I watch our city leaders passive-aggressive to death, powerful and much-needed change. It is easy to feel powerless and lost, and many of us feel powerless now, but we cannot give up. We have to remember what Justice Ginsburg knew, that she was able to bring change because culture changed, and culture changed because the people in power were being forced to listen to the dissent from their wives and their daughters at home and at their dinner tables, and that is us. I never got to meet Justice Ginsburg, but I benefit from the world she made more just. I got a credit card because of her. I was able to rent a house and buy a home because of her. And it's not just me, it's all men and women. And like everybody else who has been up here, I am also devastated and I am scared. But now more than ever, we have to turn our loss into a win. We have to dissent. We can vote. We can march. We can door knock. We can donate to campaigns. We can vocally tell people in power and in our homes and lives that oppose progress that their complicity is not good enough anymore. We can call Joni Ernst and Chuck Grassley and tell them to honor the Merrick Garland precedent that they set their own selves. We can hold their feet to the fire because that is our job. We can stop pretending politics don't affect our lives, and we can start fighting. We can resist cynicism and be bold enough to make the world better than it is now. Justice Ginsburg is a legend. What we have lost as a country is immeasurable. But her legacy is clearing the path for more people like her. We can step up. And you know what? There will be others like her. There are others like her, and they are here tonight in this crowd. It is us. Amanda Littman, the founder of Run for Something, said of Justice Ginsburg, "May her memory be a revolution," and we are that revolution. We are that memory. We are her legacy. We can fight for the things we believe in. And so, as we go from here, let us dissent so loudly and so forcefully that we change the world around us. And even in our losses, we have to find a way to win. Thank you.
Thank you for putting to words and articulating everything that is on our minds, Liz. You always articulate that so well. I am the Executive Director of the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. I work in civil rights. It's my vocation, my job, my passion. And I can't tell you how many times I've been told to sit down, be quiet, you have too much to say, you're too opinionated, you're too much. And I work in civil rights. We cannot stand back and we cannot be quiet. So thank you for voicing that. Our last speaker for this evening, and then we'll close shortly, is Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer.
Well, hello there, and thank you, first of all, to Indivisible, who I know helped organize this, and Stefanie for moderating tonight, and all of the speakers, all the Liz's, and the Ashley. I am so honored to get to honor Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg with you tonight, with all of you. It's also an honor to get to stand here as your Congresswoman, but it is an occasion of great sadness and of great loss. Last night, we lost Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a hero, an inspiration, an icon, and a brilliant woman who has shaped our country for the better, for all. And I stand with you tonight, truly unable to offer words of comfort, as I too grieve with you, as we grieve with our country. But I do hope to leave you with motivation and a recommitment to honor Justice Ginsburg's legacy by doing the work and never taking our democracy or justice for granted. You see, last night, my husband is here. We decided, we were both obviously very sad, again, with all of you, and we decided to watch the RBG documentary last night. And we sat there, held hands on the couch as we watched this, and watched the extraordinary life of a woman who has shaped our country forever for better. She grew up in a working class family, and she broke barriers in undergraduate school and law school that changed the way that women in this country were able to advance. She became comfortable in the most uncomfortable. And as a lawyer, and this is one of the things that I remember the most, she didn't just take up the hard fights for justice, she sought them out. And that, to me, is one of the greatest pieces of her legacy. Because between her passion and advocacy and wins for equality, there was work, tireless work. And that is what I promise you tonight from me, always as your Congresswoman. And that is what I ask of you tonight and always. We must never give up the fight for justice, for equality, and we must honor her legacy. Because you see, if we do that in the months and years ahead, this is how we secure our values. This is how we honor the legacy of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Thank you for your hard work for us. We know you are battling for us day in and day out, so thank you so much. Woo. Justice Bader Ginsburg taught us when someone has transformative ideas, those ideas should not be tapered, they should not be diminished. She said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Tonight, we mourn the loss of a champion. Tonight, we mourn the loss of an icon. But may her memory be a revolution. We, the people, must continue. We, the people, will continue. We will continue to stand up for marginalized populations and communities. We will continue to fight for civil rights and civil liberties. We will continue to fight for equity and for justice. We, the people, must continue. We, the people, will continue. Now we'll take a moment to light our candles. And when you do leave, if you would please put them back on the table. We tend to use these more often than we should have to. Thank you all for coming tonight, and let's continue to honor the legacy and do the work.